Good evening, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Hope everybody had a great weekend and the beginning of the week started out well. I'm Phil Russert, and this is Creatorcon Q&A. As usual, I'm bringing you another great guest tonight. It's going to be exciting to have a writer on as well. Before we get to that, I just want a few things to cover. First of all, I get a lot of wonderful support from people, and I just want to do a quick shout out to two people that have been really supportive and just seem like really good, decent people, and I want to say thank you, and they're part of the community. That's Kit and Guy. It's pronounced Kit, but it's spelled Kiet, N as in the initial N, Guy. Go check him out on Facebook. He's a big fan of the industry. He's been a big supporter of the show. And I just want to say thank you to Kit. Also, a writer, J.M. DeSantis. Go follow him. Go see what books he's putting out. Please go support him. He's been a very kind, very supportive person of what I'm doing and the show and everything. So please go check those guys out and support JM's writing and all of his books. I also want to do my usual shout outs. For your comic book needs, you have Mad Titan Comics. It's MadTitan_comics on Instagram. And Eric Gunderson is the owner-operator on Facebook. He has slabbed comics, key issues, dollar issues, everything you want. So go talk to him. Also, we have Android's Amazing Podcast with James Santana. He also works at Android's Amazing Comic Shop, which is near me, and they will be at my show on December 6th. Their podcast is awesome. James is very knowledgeable of the comic industry and entertaining, so go check out their podcast. It's everywhere, Spotify, and you name it, you can find it. We also have Andy Lee, who is www.lesdudis.com, LESDUDIS. He is a wonderful human being that does all my promo graphics. Without him, I would look really unprofessional. So thank you, Andy. I really appreciate that. We have the Bit and Apple, and of course, It Came From the Radio. Those are awesome shows. Go check them out on YouTube and all over the internet. Mark Torres is the host of It Came From the Radio, and Rafael Tavares Jr. is part of the Bit and Apple crew. So please go follow them, check them out, etc. And finally, we have Art by Kike, which is his Instagram page, and on Instagram, he has his Inking with Kike show every Monday night at 8 p.m. He inks while he has a special guest. This month is the all-female artist month. So please check that out. I also just want to say, please share this out live. Let's get as much exposure to everyone as possible. Share. Share it out live, please. And really, let's just help build a community, support indie creators, and give them as much exposure as possible. Hey, Heather. Hey, Gallo. How are you? Thanks for coming out. Finally, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Creatorcon event, and also we have a contest going on right now with the Kevin Eastman interview I did to win a graphic novel, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so please go check that out. And lastly, December 6th, 2020, I have my physical convention. It's a small show. Come out, and it's 10 to 6 p.m. Billy Tucci, Larry Stroman, Rodney Ramos, Keith Williams, and a bunch of great local talent and a bunch of comic vendors, so hope to see you there. Now that I got that all out of the way, tonight's guest is writer and creative mind Mike Baron. I mean, The Badger, Nexus. He worked on The Punisher, The Flash. He's got a book, Florida Man, out that is, the reviews are saying it's hysterical. And I really love what he did with The Badger. The character, to me, was really innovative in the 80s. No one had done anything like it before. And I just think it's an awesome character. So without further ado, writer Mike Baron. Hey, how you doing?
Good.
So thanks for coming on tonight. You were just on Niall Scala's show, Five and Dime, and it's his Pop XP show. So you've had a busy night tonight. Yeah, Niall's a good guy.
Before that, I was on Mike Miller's show.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Oh, Mike S. Miller, who did Injustice and all that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Mike. Well, you've had a busy day.
You're all here.
Yeah. Hello, how are you?
This is my wife, Ian.
Nice to meet you. This is great. We got everybody. How's it going? So is Ann the driving force behind you or next to you? Helps you out?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I heard you saying on Niall's show that, you know, she's managing the Kickstarters and stuff like that for you. That's awesome. Every great man has a wonderful woman by his side, right? An awesome woman by his side. So let's get into it. By the way, I just wanted to show this while I have it up on my phone. You sent it to me. This, oh, it's not coming out well. Damn it. That's the cover to Nexus. I was trying to see if I could show it. I'm sorry.
People just gonna have to take our word for it. It's awesome. Kelsey Shannon did the cover, and he's doing the interior pages. This is a 3-issue series I have coming out from Splato. And the first issue is available as an add-on to Impossible Stars on Indiegogo. Chuck Dixon wrote Impossible Stars.
Awesome. And I think people will be excited. You said it's 22 pages, but you might be making it a bigger book?
Well, no, there are 3 issues, or 3 22-page stories, and eventually they'll be collected, and it'll be a 66-page story.
Amazing. Gallo says, all hail Nexus. You know how I was telling you, I was talking to a big Nexus fan? Well, that's Gallo Romero right there. So he loves Nexus. So let's go back to the start. What inspired you to become a writer?
I was a kid growing up in Mitchell, South Dakota, and I went into a cigar store, which is where you bought paperbacks, and I bought a paperback novel. It was The Deep Blue Goodbye by John D. MacDonald. And I walked out of the store and I looked at it, and it had a blurb on the cover, and it looked fascinating. And I just had this insight that this guy wasn't writing these as a hobby or for his health. This is what he was doing for a living. And I decided that's what I want to do. And I always had this unshakable faith that I would be able to write. I didn't really start writing until high school, and I wrote for the high school newspaper. And then in college, I started writing for a newspaper called Takeover, an alternative weekly. And the reason is I went over there and there were hundreds of record albums lined up against the wall. I said, Mark, where'd these record albums come from? He says, oh, the record company sent them to us. You want some? Take them, but you got to write about them. So I said, all right. So I took the records and I started doing music reviews. And I'm still doing music reviews. I love music.
Oh, that's cool.
I write about music all my life. After I graduated from college, I heard there were newspapers in Boston who would hire anybody if they could write. And I went there and I stayed with a friend, and I answered an ad in the Boston Phoenix for volunteers to participate in a National Institute of Mental Health study of the effects of marijuana. And I lived on a hospital ward for a month with 11 other freaks. We smoked government dope every day, and we took a battery of tests. It was just like college. And then when I got out, I wrote that up for the Boston Phoenix, and they printed it, and that's how I started in journalism. And later I became the music editor. And it was my job to go out night after night and listen to live performances and to interview the musicians. And it was a great job. I loved doing it, and I saw a lot of great music. And it's still one of my great joys is going out and hearing live music and writing about it. I still write about it.
Raj wanted to ask you, who's your favorite band?
Oh, Raj, you know, I have
Why am I blurry?
hundreds of favorite bands, but I'll name a couple. I love Tower of Power, Jellyfish, Blank Pages, Ron Bonfiglio, the Licorice Quartet. There are so many. I say this every year, and every year it's true. This has been one of the greatest years for pop music in history. You would never know it listening to the radio,
right,
except for Little Stevie's Underground Garage or reading the Standard Music Press. But it's just been fantastic. Another guy I want to point out is Nato Coles. If you like Bruce Springsteen, but you're not crazy about his output for the last 20 years, Nato Coles will launch you into the stratosphere. It's rave up rock and roll. It's very Springsteen-like. But different too, and it's a lot fresher, in my opinion.
Cool. Gallo said that Neil Gaiman was also a music journalist before breaking into comics.
Neil's a good guy.
And Mark says, hello, gentlemen. Mark May.
Hi, Mark.
He's a big fan. Mark loves you, man. You saw what he wrote, right? He wrote some nice things about you. So who have been writers that have inspired you and influenced you, if any?
Well, first and foremost, John D. MacDonald. I gobbled up those Travis McGee novels, and I thought, wow. I mean, I still admire them, and I wanted to create my own Travis McGee-like character. And this is a familiar character in film noir or noir fiction or detectives, thrillers. Uh, uh, Raymond Chandler wrote about Philip Marlowe. You've got Jack Reacher. My character is Josh Pratt. He's a reformed motorcycle hoodlum who went to prison where he found God and comes out and tries to turn his life around. I just turned in my 8th Josh Pratt novel. The first is called Biker, and they're all available under the Biker banner because there are a lot of them have to do with bikers, but most don't. Uh, People come to him as a court of last resort when they can't get justice any other way. And that's what Travis McGee was like. Uh, and Josh, he's not a lawyer. He's not a smartass. He keeps his mouth shut. He has a lot of respect for people. He just wants to help people. But he's one of those guys with one foot inside the law and one foot out. So when all other recourses are not working, you go to Josh. He's the last court you go to, the last recourse.
You seem to really like the anti-hero. I mean, you worked on the Punisher, the Badger. You know, Nexus goes after dictators, and he's supposed to be very harsh with how he deals with them. Um, where does that stem from? I mean, is that just something? It just happens to be what comes out of your mind, or do you relate to that in some way? Or
Well, yes and no. I believe in moral fiction. John Gardner has a book out called On Moral Fiction where he explains the principles. The reader uh, wants to see good rewarded and evil punished. Now, this doesn't go straight down the track, and we all know vital books that grab you by the throat where good does not prevail. I'm thinking like Les Miserables
right?
or the works of Charles Dickens and the works of Mark Twain. These are great novels that you can't put down. But in the end, the good guy does not always prevail. Uh, but evil is punished. Evil does get its comeuppance. Uh, and I think that the reader wants somebody with whom he can identify, with whom he can root, for whom he can root. But the whole point of the story is to entertain. That's first and foremost. If you have a message, as Samuel Goldwyn says, use Western Union. Well, I have 3 rules as a writer. Number 1 is it's my job to entertain. Number 2 is show, don't tell. And number 3 is be original. Uh, and be original means that we're all unique human beings. And those of us who write invariably process our own experiences into our stories and our own perceptions of what the world is like. Uh, but I don't preach. You know, the characters are the way they are. It's the writer's job to imagine every point of view, and I try to present a wide array of points of view in my books. I don't want everybody to be alike. Uh, I want characters to fascinate the readers. A story is a dynamic narrative with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And by dynamic, I mean that the outcome is always in question. You don't know what's going to happen next. If the protagonist were living the perfect life and everything was going great, there wouldn't be much of a story.
Right.
Something has to happen to put him in motion. His life is in danger. The life of a loved one is in danger. And the perfect ending to me comes as both a complete surprise, but on reflection, perfectly natural. You say, of course. And for an
Right.
example of that, I would just look at the end of The Planet of the Apes, the original, when they come across the Statue of Liberty
Right.
buried in the sand. Because you think, and then you think, of course.
Yeah, like after the fact, it makes sense, right?
Right.
I always said too, a hero is only as good as the villain. If the villain isn't a viable threat,
That's
how
right.
how can you possibly relate to a hero that's not struggling? You
That's right.
know, like they have that term Mary Sue, someone who just goes through everything and it's like comes natural and there's no challenge. That's not real life. So I like tough villains that do win sometimes.
A great villain makes for a great story.
Absolutely, I think even more so than the hero because I also think that we all, as good as we all battle with those, those inner demons, our moments of anger. Sometimes you may not actually follow through, but sometimes you really like to sock somebody in the face, or something villainous. So, sorry, I gotta
Del
plug in my
Guzman
phone.
asks, "Do you write more for your own pleasure or to entertain?" And Del, I believe that a good writer, has to entertain himself before he'll entertain others. And I do that. I try to do that. I try to make the prose lively, so that when I look back at it months or years later, I think, yeah, this is good stuff. And a lot of stuff I can't look back at, but that's from years ago. Uh, and I would say for the past 15 years, I've been pretty much on point, which means I like my own writing. A lot of writers, uh, they say, "Oh, I don't know if it's any good," but I don't have that problem.
So when you came up with Nexus, and Steve Root has even said that it was really your creation, did you have Nexus in mind before you met Steve, or did it
No,
come after?
no, it came when we had an opportunity. We were in the right place at the right time. When Capital City Distribution decided to launch their own comic line, and I had seen the dude's art, and I knew what he liked to draw, and it lent itself to science fiction. And my first thought was, what if somebody died every time the protagonist showed up? That would be dramatic. And that's not a new insight. That's why we have police shows and doctor shows and lawyer shows. Uh, but I didn't want the guy to be a sadistic killer. So I worked up this whole mythos around him that he was a reluctant executioner of mass murderers being driven by an insane alien. And of course, the dreams would come to him at night, dreams of mass murderers, and he would relive these crimes and the suffering of the victims. And when he woke, he knew what he had to do. He had to track that guy down and eliminate him, where the dreams would continue and become more intense until they drove him mad.
And what made you come up? What inspired you for this whole, fictitious world, the whole plot and everything?
I just went home and I brainstormed the first 12 pages and I drew them out by hand, which is how I used to write in those days. And I did it panel by panel. That's how I would write. I would write the first scene and make it dramatic. Bunch of people celebrating some kind of special day, and they're all rich and they're all very pleased with themselves. They were of a certain class. They were a political class. When all of a sudden Nexus crashes the party and reveals that the host is a mass murderer. And from
Wow.
there, I just proceeded panel by panel. And it taught me a great many things. I don't write that way anymore. Now I do detailed outlines, which I never would have done in those days. But one thing it taught me was to think about what happens next and to make it compelling. That's the essential question in all fiction. What happens next? And the reader has to care before he turns the page.
Right. Now, do you have it all plotted out ahead of time, or do you write as you go, or you just creative juices are flowing as you write?
A little bit of both. I tend to work up a detailed outline for any story I'm about to undertake these days, and that includes comic book series. But in the writing, the actual writing of the series or the novel, I find that I deviate from the outline because I find new paths to go down. And every writer who's worth his salt knows this, that once you create a character, if it's a good creation, the character is going to turn around at some point and tell you what he's going to do.
So, you give this character life, and like you said, the character starts to dictate the story. Have you ever looked back on a decision you made in the writing, something that happened, a character that died, etc., and regretted it?
No, because I won't let that out of the house with my name on it if I think it's a mistake.
Cool, because I know I've seen some writers like Kirkman even say that later on they regretted making the decision they did. So I was just curious. Gallo says he misses Sandra Peel. Oh, wrong one. Sorry. There you go.
Sandra,
Yeah.
she'll be back. She's in the novel.
So tell us, yeah, please talk about the novel and everything that we're going to see for Nexus in the future.
Well, dude's crowdfunding his Gormando saga right now. Years ago, he hired me to write it because he wanted to be a publisher. And he said, what's the ultimate Nexus story? And I said, Nexus versus Galactus.
That's
We
cool.
couldn't use Galactus, so we created our own. And I wrote the scripts for him, but he changed all the dialogue. I wasn't crazy about that.
Wow.
So it occurred to me to write a novel, and I already had the detailed outline in my head for writing out 100 pages of script. But once I started writing the novel, of course, the characters and situations took over. So the novel is very different from the Gormando book that he's going to put out right now. And I've seen the book. It's magnificent. It's 120 pages long. You know, it's doing it at its finest. But this is my version. And we were just talking this week, and we're planning more material together. But in the meantime, I've started on a second Nexus novel, which is loosely based on the 3-issue series that Richard Meyer is publishing.
Now, you said that sometimes you'll deviate from your outline and everything. So, have you ever thought about publishing your quote unquote director's cut, like, or cutting edge floor, the things that you originally did, or that's it, they're gone, they weren't part of the story?
There's only one version, and it's the best version I can produce.
Cool. So, fans of Nexus should be excited because you got the second novel. You've got the 3-part comic you're doing with Impossible Stars, right? The Kickstarter for that, or is it
The
Indiegogo?
first one is being offered with Impossible Stars. I don't know what plans Richard has for the second two, but Kelsey Shane illustrating them, and he's doing a magnificent job. And if you want to see what it looks like, the cover at least is available on the Impossible Stars Indiegogo page.
Could someone do me a favor? Impossible Stars is written by Chuck Dixon. Can you put that link in the chat so that they can go look and see to go for the Nexus? Do they just? Okay,
Yeah, Impossible Stars Indiegogo.
Okay, cool. So going from Nexus, which I mean, it started with Capital, went to First. There you go. Thank you. And then it went to Dark Horse. But it sustained an 80-issue run despite all of those changes in publishers, which I think was just fantastic. But did you find it hard to maintain an audience or even increase the audience with it constantly changing publishers, or?
Well, I don't know. I'm unaware of the audience because we've never seen a royalty check in our lives except for overseas editions through Dark Horse. I mean, I never got a royalty check from First.
Oh, wow.
We were just happy to be paid for doing what we love. And they pay decently. I have no complaints about that whatsoever.
Do you have the creative rights to Nexus?
Mike Richardson returned copyright and trademark to Steve and I.
Awesome.
It's never happened before, and it'll probably never happen again.
That's amazing. I'm glad to see you getting it back. All the work, the blood, sweat, and tears. And he belongs home with Daddy. Yeah, like I said at the beginning, you're very innovative. I mean, just the thought of the character of Nexus and everything they go through, you hadn't seen that before. It was very typical spandex superheroes at the time, which were great. But here you come with this character, totally different. There's the whole psychological element of things. And you go, okay, let's top that. Let's go with the Badger. And here's the Badger who's it delves with mental, health. It delves into abuse. And at the same time, he talks to animals, and there's the nature aspect, and he's this vigilante, and he's struggling with his inner demons and his mental issues as well as what's going on the outside. But when you write, you wonder what's in his head and what's really going on. And I can't help but think that characters like Deadpool and the current iteration of Moon Knight,
I know,
must have, I mean, come on, they had to look at the Badger and say, this is where their influence is. So, I mean, what made you come up with the Badger? I mean, where was your influence on that?
All right. Well, I thought we'd get a second comic going. I knew this guy, Jeff Butler, fine artist. I said, Jeff, do you want to do a comic? He said, sure. And Jeff, what do you want to draw? He says, I want to draw druids. So I wrote this 12-page story about a cantankerous druid in 5th century Wales who so irritates his neighbors that they hire the Vikings to drop him off the edge of the earth. Only they never get to the edge of the earth. They get to the New World. They carry him in as far as they can. They bury him in what would become Wisconsin. And Jeff illustrated, and it was in fact, it is in the first issue of Badger. And the reason is we took these in to show to the boys at Capitol, and Milt, who was the publisher, he looked at it and said, "Nah, give us a costume crime fighter." And Jeff says, "Well, I don't want these pages to go to waste." And I said, "Fine, we'll integrate them into the story." And that's how Badger met Ham. And the rest of it came out. So I thought, well, why would anybody put on a costume and fight crime? They'd have to be crazy. And I was reading The Minds of Billy Milligan at the time, one of the first serious studies of multiple personalities by Daniel Keyes. And that was my inspiration. I decided to make him a multiple personality, only one of whom is a costume crime fighter.
Right.
And that's the most integrated personality, which is so funny about it, because the core personality, Norbert Sykes, was nobody. His life had been destroyed by his upbringing. And for people who don't know, multiple personality is the result of severe childhood abuse. And we dealt with that seriously in a 4-issue series for Dark Horse called The Shattered Mirror that Jill Thompson illustrated.
Yeah, I always loved, I mean, the aesthetics of the Badger and then just the content. And you had crossovers with the Nexus and Badger. And when you read it and you wonder, is he really meeting Nexus? Is this in his head? What's going on? And it's just great how you do that. I mean, you really, and again, this was a time where everybody's giving Neil Adams credit for, talking about drug abuse in the 80s. Like nobody talked about his comics. But you never really got credit for tackling the mental health issue that no one ever touched.
Well, I don't require credit for that. I'm gratified that people like the book. I mean, it's popped up again and again in popular fiction. There's a lot of popular fiction that deals with severe mental problems. I wish I could bring these names up, but I can't feature them right now.
Right.
But the Badger was a character that lends itself to any type of story, serious or funny. And most of them were pretty funny. But
right.
The serious ones were very serious. I mean, some of my favorite issues were, he would talk to people who were no longer with us, but they were real to him,
Right.
such as Warren Oates, Elvis Presley, and Bruce Lee. And there's an issue called Cruising with the King, which features both Bruce Lee and Elvis Presley.
Speaking of which, Bruce Lee, Gallo would ask, was the Badger modeled after martial arts legend Golden Boy Joe Louis?
Oh, no, not at all. Although I admire Joe Louis a great deal, but I like to think the Badger was my own creation. He was more modeled after Billy Milligan. I mean, there was nothing of Billy Milligan's personality in the Badger. It's just when I read that book, one of Billy's alternate personalities was a Russian gang enforcer. And the way Daniel Keyes wrote it, he was very effective with his hands. You didn't mess with him. And Billy Milligan had no formal martial arts training, but when he became this person, the transformation was so complete, he was able to do unbelievable things. Of course, the Badger has trained, and that's a major feature of the story, is that he's trained assiduously in the martial arts all his life, and he's still training. And in the new novel that we're about to launch, he quits working for Ham and he opens his own martial arts studio.
So when is this novel, the Badger novel, going to be due out? Do you know? Do you have a date or a time frame?
That's up to Ann. We're putting together the campaign right now, but it's finished and it's terrific. I'm very excited about it. We will probably launch before the end of the year, and everybody will hear about it.
I'm excited about that. It's funny too, because I just recently got a commission of the Badger from an artist, Ricardo Silva, and it's hanging here on my wall. I should pull it off and show you. Yeah, after the show, if you stay backstage for a minute, I'll bring it up. I'll show you. It came out fantastic. Geraldo Borges, he's a famous artist for DC and Marvel. He said, unfortunately, I haven't read all Badger's stories so far. Is there some adventure of the character in Brazil? If no, it could be a good idea.
I don't know, Geraldo. It's possible. that there is a Portuguese version. I know they did a lot of versions. Hang on a second. Is Geraldo the guy that?
Yes.
Is he my artist?
Yes. Yes, he is.
Well, Geraldo's cover. He did the cover of the book.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and he's a great guy, and he's an excellent artist. Absolutely. He was excited to be on today to talk with you, to see you.
Yeah. Well, here, let me post that cover on your Facebook feed here. I posted a number of things there. You know, Geraldo, I will mail you some badgers in Brazil. I can do that. It's the least I can do.
Yeah, put it on my post, and maybe I can show it on my phone.
There it is. It's up.
Yeah, all right. So, yeah, I can show this. This is hang on. I'm trying not to get
Yeah,
the
it doesn't really do justice to it. Wait till you see the
No, but
cover.
it's very gritty. And Geraldo has a nice gritty style, which I think matches the Badger really well. The cover is beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I really am. I would love to see a regular comic series again, but a novel I would love because it's really going to delve into his multiple personalities. So I'm excited about that.
I am talking to a publisher about adapting the novel into comics.
That would be great. And Geraldo, I probably would sign up in a minute.
I'd love to work with him. I'd love to work with you, Geraldo.
Mark said, "Have a great night, gentlemen. Great interview." He's got to get going.
Thanks, Mark.
I'm not sure what. Forgive me. Shorin Ryu.
Shorin Ryu.
Ryu. Okay, I didn't know how to pronounce it.
Okinawan karate style.
And then, so both Nexus and the Badger had nefarious forces influencing the heroes to do things they wouldn't necessarily do.
Well, Nexus more so than the Badger.
Right.
But the Badger has a keen sense of right and wrong.
Right.
But, you know, some of his other personalities aren't so friendly.
Right.
One of them is a mass murderer.
Yep.
His name is Pierre. You don't want to meet Pierre.
Geraldo says, "Awesome. Badger's my favorite comic book character. It is an honor for me doing the cover." So, Geraldo's one of the sweetest, nicest guys you're ever going to meet in your life. Just telling you that right now. Yeah, he
love
is.
His heart. I got more Geraldo badgers that he sent me over the years.
Well, if you ever come to New York area, around New York Comic Con, me, and Geraldo will go out and get something to eat.
That would be terrific if they ever start having conventions again.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that too. Actually, your thoughts on that. But, you've also gotten a lot of accolades. I mean, Inkwell. I'm sorry, the Inkpot, the Eisner Awards. I mean, how does it feel to get that kind of appreciation from your peers for your bodies of work?
It's gratifying.
Yeah. Does it motivate you to up it more, or do you just whatever comes?
No, that's not what motivates me. What motivates me is telling a better story. I'm, as I said, I have no doubt about my work over the past 10 years. A lot of art writers, they say, "Oh, I don't know if this is any good. Will you read this for me, please?" I don't have those doubts because I'm on point. I've been at it for such a long time, and I'm excited about telling new stories. That's what excites me, is when I get an inspiration and carry it through.
Do you ever get like a writer's block or anything that you have to fight through?
Yes, I do. And that's one reason that I'm always working on 4 or 5 different projects at a time. And that's my cure for writer's block.
Interesting. So what about doing 4 or 5 titles at a time helps you, focus and get away from that?
Well, if I run dry on whatever it is I'm working on, my subconscious is always working. And I know that I can focus on a different project and be ready to go. And which brings us to what happens next, the essential question in all fiction. And I'm always working on that in my head. What happens next in this story? What happens next in that story? Now, the stories with the detailed outlines, are much easier to write.
Right.
But sometimes I'm winging it. Now, there's some writers who don't outline at all. Like Elmore Leonard never wrote an outline.
Oh, really?
He just sit down and wing it.
Now, when you're writing for a comic book, you're obviously scripting. You're telling the artist what you want them to depict on the page so that the art can help tell the story with your writing. Are you very specific and detailed when you
Oh
send
yeah,
an artist a
oh yeah,
script?
very
I mean, to the
specific.
T?
Yeah, I'd be happy to send you a script.
That'd be awesome. Oh, hell yeah. So, and do you find that artists like you giving that detailed description of what to do, or I mean, do you give them any freedom or leeway, so to speak, or really,
Sure.
this is what I want, this is my vision?
Well, no, I'm always happy to hear a better way to do it. If an artist comes up with a better way to do it, or suggests we do it from a different angle or a different vision, or break it up into more panels, if it makes sense, I say go for it.
Okay. Now Badger is that's jumped around a little too. I think it was 2007. It was out with IDW, right? And it had been with Image Comics
We did a
before that.
limited series with IDW.
Right. So, I mean, as far as the comic book, you said that you're looking to adapt the novel to comic book. Are you shopping around to publishers at this point, or?
Well, no, I do have a publisher that's interested.
Awesome. That's gonna be exciting. And you're welcome on any time to promote Nexus and the Badger and everything, of course.
Thank you, Philip.
So, what about? Tell us about your times at your time with Marvel. You were doing the Punisher, again another anti-hero, but a little more two-dimensional as opposed to what you were writing with the Badger. Because I mean, granted, the Punisher has his demons as well, but it was kind of straight up with him, mafia boss, kill. you know, but
Well, he
you
started out that way. It was a blatant ripoff of The Executioner. Everybody knows that. But when Carl Potts asked me to write it, I approached it as a straight crime story with no superheroics. Now, of course, the Kingpin was in there because he's a natural enemy of the Punisher, and he wasn't supernatural in
right.
any way. He was just a powerful gangland figure. Likewise, Jigsaw. And for 3 years, I wrote it as a straight crime story. But then Carl got kicked upstairs, and I got a new editor, and the new editor was a gimmick guy. Uh, and he wanted to integrate it more closely with the Marvel Universe. And he always had these uh, gimmick uh, covers, which I kind of thought were cool. Like there was the plain brown wrapper cover. I don't know if you ever saw it. And
I
there were
remember
photograph covers. Like one was of a wedding cake.
that. I remember.
Yeah.
But you
And
also you introduced Microchip, which added dimensions to the Punisher because now he has this sidekick to deal with and things like that. How did that work with the writing the Punisher? Now it's not just brooding Punisher, go kill gangster. There's layers now.
he was a necessary character for tech support. Uh, Punisher just couldn't do it all alone and arm himself and track all these people by himself. He had to have a tech guy, and that's how I created Microchip.
See, I think that was very vital, like you said, because he's not Bruce Wayne. He doesn't have all these resources and money and everything. Even Bruce Wayne needed Lucius Fox. So I thought it was a great addition to the universe. You've also done the Flash with DC and Deadman. Now, one is obviously supernatural. The other one is superpowers. How do you approach those books as a writer when they're such a different mindset?
Well, the books had nothing to do with each other. When Mike Gold asked me to write The Flash, he gave me a blank slate. He said, well, Wally West is the Flash now. And I read a few books to get a hang of Wally. Uh, and my first uh, inspiration was that he had to consume enormous amounts of calories to provide the energy for all his super speed.
Right.
And the second was that he was a young man on the make and a bit of a rake. Uh, and he had yet to acquire a lot of wisdom, which was why he was looking to get paid and looking to meet women.
I mean, that's a total departure from Barry Allen and everything that was going on before. So it was a great new, fresh take, which seems to be what you do. I mean, you can take something mundane and twist it into something different. I mean, like I said, going back to your characters, nobody was doing stuff like that at the time. And then here you are taking the mythos, even though it's a different Flash, you're taking this mythos and you're turning up on its ass again and making it different. And it's those stories, those plots, those things that you put in, those elements are carrying on into today. So, I mean, how do you feel putting your mark on these things? You know, even if you're not writing a book anymore, your mark is on them forever.
Well, I feel good about him. My one big insight into Dead Man was that he was not a superhero, he was a horror character.
Right.
And this just happened to coincide with Kelly Jones' explosion and tendency to draw gothic. And as you know, Kelly just exploded on those two
Yep.
Dead Man graphic novels and became the Kelly Jones we know today.
Absolutely. And so, can you, without like throwing you under a bus, can you tell us about the differences working for Marvel and DC, and how they were the same, how they were different, if you had a preference of the two?
No, I have no complaints about either company. They both treated me very well. If there's a difference, I think DC, because they were connected with Warner Brothers, was a little more showbiz. So every time I came to town, they'd take me out to a show. They took me to see Ray Charles at Carnegie Hall, and it was
That's
quite an
cool.
experience because Ray had a guy lead him out to the piano, and he was just kind of shuffling along, and I don't know, he must have been in his 60s at least by then. And I thought, wow, man, I hope he can put on a show. And then he sits down at the piano, and wham! I mean, the guy just became electric.
Yeah. Did you write a review?
No, no,
You should have. That would have been great.
yeah.
Do you feel one publisher is a little more controlling or tighter than the other, or did they give you a lot of free leeway with what you wanted to write?
I had a lot of leeway. I didn't think either one was particularly controlling. I can't remember where they came in and messed with any of my scripts. They were pretty happy with them.
Cool. So you also have your own owned project, Florida Man.
That's right.
Now, if you look at the reviews for Florida Man, I find that really entertaining because this is a book that is either adored and loved or hated. There's
It
extremes.
says vile and profane right on the cover.
I mean, it's just funny though because there's no middle ground. I don't see anybody's. There's no 3-star review. It's either 5-star or 1 star. I hate it. And the funny thing is, the people that hated it didn't even get past 2 pages, so I don't know
No,
how they can have an
I quit
opinion.
reading after the second page. Vile language. So this is vile and profane right on the cover.
And that's the point. But it's also been revered as a very funny book. I mean, laugh out loud book. So, can you tell us where you got the idea for Florida Man, and then kind of pitch us about it?
I always say I don't pick my stories; they pick me. And I went on every time went on the internet. There was another Florida Man story, and finally I said, "Well, geez, I have to write a novel about this guy." But I didn't want it to be sleazy or horrible like a lot of the stories. It kind of skates that edge. It's PG-13. And in many ways, Gary's the most admirable character in the book. He's got a good heart. He's just got a hair trigger temper. He likes to get high. He likes to get drunk. He's always looking for a fast buck, and that leads him into a lot of awkward situations. But the pitch was Gary Duba's having a bad day. There's a snake in his toilet, a rabid raccoon in the yard, and his girl Crystal's in jail for getting naked at a Waffle Hut and licking the manager. So Gary sets off with his best friend Floyd to sell his prize Barry Bonds rookie card to raise the $500 needed for bail. But things get out of hand. And they get way out of hand. It's one ridiculous situation after another. I kept thinking, what would be the most outrageous and humiliating situation I can get him into?
So, again, how do you feel when you get these negative reviews, though? Does it bother you at all, or does it just empower you to say, "Hey, I'm getting attention. I'm doing
No,
something right"?
they paid for the book. They're entitled to say whatever they like.
Are you going to be doing follow-ups to Florida Man?
I'm working on the third novel now. The second novel is out. It's called Hogzilla.
Nice. And where can we find that?
They're all on Amazon. Just go to Amazon, type Mike Barron, and all my books will pop up.
Awesome. And when can we expect the third one? Are you still in the middle of
Oh,
writing it, or?
I'm still working on it now, and Todd is working on the Florida Man graphic novel. I don't know if you folks have seen the art, but
Yes.
go to the Indiegogo page and scroll down and take a look at the art. It'll blow your mind.
Just going back to a few things, Geraldo had said before the movie Split, there was Badger. And I think it was Gallo earlier had asked about a Nexus movie. I mean, or an animated show or something. I'm sorry, I forgot. I meant to get to it before. I mean, how have you looked into any movie? Oh, here he goes. Whatever happened to the planned Nexus animation or movie? Have you ever looked into movie rights to these your properties?
Mike Richardson is determined to see Nexus as a live action film. Mike Richardson is also representing us for a possible animated film.
Awesome.
And just keep your fingers crossed.
Do you think with Moon Knight going to be a TV show on Disney that could catapult maybe to get Badger, like a streaming show? I mean, have you ever pitched to Netflix or
I
one of
don't
these?
pitch. I wouldn't know how to do that.
Well, or Richard, anybody to pitch for you? Because I'd love to see Badger done in a live streaming show.
Well, we do have a couple producers who are interested, but I don't own the Badger. First Comics owns the Badger.
Uh,
However, the publisher, Ken Levin, is a good guy, and he's interested in pursuing this just as much as I am. So keep your fingers crossed on that too.
that would be awesome. I would love that. And we should all tell Netflix and everybody right in that we want to see these things. I would love to. What about some sort of adaptation like for a show for Florida Man? I mean, I could see that as a series going on episode to
Yeah,
episode.
I would love to see that too. But since my novel came out, another novel came, Florida Man, called Florida Man, came out, and that guy had connections, and it got snapped up for TV. There's nothing I can do about that.
Oh my
Good luck to
God.
them and congratulations. I understand it's a completely different type of story. It's a crime story. It's nothing like my story. Do I
Right.
think mine would make a great movie? Of course I do. But again, uh, I don't have the slightest idea how to make that happen. I'm just happy to get published. That would be up to my publisher, and I'll talk to him about it.
If anybody has any connections or knows how to get this pitched or whatever, reach out to Mike and talk to him. Let's get this going. We need fresh ideas in Hollywood again, and you would be perfect to get those fresh ideas out there. So I think we should do that personally. Are you collecting or reading anything now in the comic book world?
Phil, the only comics I read are comics that people send me.
Okay,
Friends,
and
and none of them are Marvel or DC. I read about Marvel and DC
right.
on Bleeding Fool and Bounding into Comics, and what I read is does not make me want to read the comic.
Fool. I love how you slipped that in there. Um, are there any? Is there any title or book that from either of the publishers, the big publishers, that you would like to work on?
Well, I always wanted to write Master of Kung Fu, but really my own characters are more dear to me, obviously. But I think I could do a good job on Master of Kung Fu. Now I see that where they've hired a new writer,
Hmm.
uh, and my question is, does she have any knowledge of martial arts?
Be honest with you, a lot of these writers don't even have knowledge of comic book writing.
I know it's called Master of Kung Fu. I mean, it just blows my mind.
Now, do you have a martial arts background yourself? Because you
Yes.
seem to. I was going to ask you. So, I mean, do you still practice?
Yeah, I'm still training. In fact, I trained today.
Oh, that's awesome. What level are you? What belt or?
I'm a fourth degree black belt.
Oh, wow. So we have to have you and Ron Garney come on out and do a little comic book spar.
Oh, there's a lot of martial artists in comics. Vale Myerick is a very fine martial artist.
Oh yeah,
And Jeff Johnson, who did Way of the Rat. In
is Jeff
fact,
Johnson really?
Jeff's written a book about how to draw fight scenes. It's really good.
Oh wow. I know Mike Diodato in Brazil is also into. I think he does karate. Karate. Steve, New Warriors is not high on Mike's must-read list. I'm guessing.
I have no idea what that is.
They have characters named Snowflake and Safe
Oh,
Space.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Gallo wants to ask, which style of martial arts do you practice?
Well, Gallo, it's called Karate West, but like any good martial arts school, they teach a little bit of everything. And if you want to take a look at my school, it's Karate West Inc. All one word, .com. Karate West Inc. INC.
Cool. And I beat you to it, Geraldo. um, so when did you start practicing martial arts? How long have you been doing it?
Since 1975.
Wow. Awesome. So are you very particular then when your artist is writing martial arts scenes
You
for you
bet.
drawing?
That's one of the reasons I started training because when I picked up Master of Kung Fu, I loved Galasi's art. But I could tell, even then, without having any martial arts knowledge, that it wasn't martial arts that they were drawing. They were just poses, they were
Right.
just movie posters. And my whole thing with action sequences is to show the action in a dynamic and realistic manner so that it unfolds before you like in a good kung fu movie. It's not a single panel, it's a series of panels showing the back and forth using real techniques.
Sure. Absolutely. And you show that kinetic energy in those panels. Steve said, I might have to sign up with Mike's karate school just so I can say that I got my ass kicked by the great Mike Barron. That would be killer cool.
That would make my day, Steve.
So besides Geraldo Borges and Steve Rude, what artist would you love I mean, that you've never worked with, would you love to work with on, like, especially if you adapt Badger to a comic book series? Like, if you had your choice of artist, who would you pick?
Well, I'd love to work with Kyle Holtz.
Okay. And we were talking about conventions before. Are there any comic book people that you never got to meet that you would have loved to have met or would love to meet, still, if they're still around?
Well, there are a great many people I admire in the field. I would just have to see who's there.
Yeah,
But I was lucky enough to meet Jack Kirby and Stan Lee and Will
nice.
Eisner.
Was it hard not to fanboy around them, or you were like, no, I'm cool. They're just people?
Well, they made it very easy to be at ease around them. I only met Jack Kirby at his 70th birthday. I just shook his hand.
Yeah,
That's all. But I got to know Stan a little bit. I interviewed him once, and we would run into each other at Marvel offices from time to time. And I got to know Will Eisner a little bit because he was good friends with Dennis Kitchen, who was a publisher of mine.
cool. Hi, Mike. Thanks for joining us. um, has there been anybody that you did meet that you fanboyed and couldn't control yourself around, or you're always keeping you cool?
Well, I don't think I've ever gushed. I've met a great many of comic books creators, and many of them I admire greatly.
Anybody's ass you ever kicked?
Nobody you'd know.
Fair enough. So, what are your thoughts about conventions coming back next year and everything?
I'm a little burnt out on huge conventions. I'll go to a small convention. I enjoy small conventions. But like
Yeah,
San Diego, the last time I was at San Diego was about 10 years ago, and it was just overwhelming. It was just exhausting. And it was such a hassle to get in. It was unbelievable with lines around the block and waiting. And I can't imagine what it's going to be like in the age of COVID.
yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see what happens. I have a feeling we're not going to see any real cons until at the earliest the second half of next year. Maybe for this time next year. I don't think anytime sooner than that, really. But let's hope for the best. But a lot of creators in the industry are saying that now, that they're really enjoying the smaller cons more. I think it's because cons have gone away from comic book creators as being the celebrities, and they've gone to the TV stars and this and that. And if they're online for a celebrity from like the CW, then that's not the demographic that's coming to see you. So a lot of them have liked the more intimate shows. You get to interact with fans. You get to talk to people who know what your bodies of work are, respect and appreciate what you've done. So I'm thinking you're going to start seeing some of those mid-tier shows really make a splash once they come back, which I hope so. because I really like the shows that are geared around comic creators. So Gallo wanted to ask you, how did you come up with the Nexus costume? Because it's so cool.
I just had this idea of a lightning bolt down his chest, and I drew that. It was my idea. And the visor was my idea too, and everything else was the dudes, the thigh-high boots and the skin tights.
Dudes. So, have you thought about any changes aesthetically to him, or you're going to keep him the way he is for everybody?
Oh no, we're not going to change Nexus. I mean, I did one series. There was we did a series, a story where he just became bored with everything and started eating and became fat like Elvis. We called those the Elvis issues, and you can find them. They're old first comics, but he overcame it.
See, that's the thing with your writing is you throw in that humor, and sometimes it seems quirky to people because you'll hit the hard topics too, and then you'll throw in humor. But if you really look, real life is that. It's tragedy 1 minute and laughing your ass off the next minute, and that's what real life is. So I think that's probably why people connect with your writing, and there's an appeal for it because you know a lot of people often write it's either always funny or it's always tragic, but life is such a mixture of everything that how it's just this big ball of different emotions that's how you write characters that really relate to people because none of us are balanced. When none of us are really balanced if you think about it. So anyway, I want to ask you one last question before we go. And if you could go back to your younger self when you were starting out, what advice would you give yourself?
I would have be I would have signed up for novel writing classes with famous authors because that's how you get published early and that's how you make connections.
Awesome. Well, look, thank you so much for coming out. As a matter of fact, what I'll do is I'll send you a picture of that badger on Facebook Messenger for you. But pet the pups for us. He's got 3 dogs. They're really cute, as you saw. Thanks for coming on. Everybody, look at if you look on the bottom, like you said, you can see all his Facebook is Michael A. Barron, but he also there's another Facebook to his work, Bodies of Work. He's on Amazon. Amazon, you can see all his bodies of work. You got Florida Man. Go check out Chuck Dixon's. What do you call it? What was the name of it again? It was Impossible Stars.
Impossible Stars.
Because he has a Nexus book attached to that. You've got www.bloodyredbaron.com. There's his Indiegogo for Florida Man. So please go support. Go check it out. We have some news Nexus coming. We have new Badger coming. We have more Florida Man coming. You've got Biker. You've got tons of stuff that he's done. Please support Mike. Go check it out. One last question. The 80 issue Nexus collected volumes, where can they go to get those? I mean,
they're all on Amazon. I think they're called the Dark Horse Treasury editions, and they're hardbound. And there's a cheaper series called the Nexus Omnibus.
Awesome.
But the Treasury editions are big.
Cool. So if you haven't read Nexus and you want to see what what it's all about and the fun is all about before you read his novels, because you're going to buy those too, please go get those collected editions. Mike, thank you so much. Wishing you much success. And again, thank you for coming out.
Thanks, Phil.
Have a great night. So that was Mike Barron. It was nice to have him out. I love the Badger. I mean, I always liked the Badger. He was one of those characters that I felt was obscured and should have been bigger. And yeah, John, Florida Man is hysterical from all the reviews. But it was great having him come out. And I love having writers on the show. I haven't been able to get a lot of writers. So to have another writer is awesome because we have writer fans out there. It's not just artists that create, obviously, as we all know. So Adelso Corona was scheduled for Friday. Unfortunately, he has to reschedule. He'll probably reschedule for December, so it's only going to be about a month delay. And we do have a show Thursday night. I will post about it, an independent artist with a book, so it'll be fantastic. I haven't filled in Friday yet, but I'm speaking to a couple of people. I'm waiting for answers back from them. If I do not fill that in, I'm actually going to sit down with Rafael Tavares of the Bitten Apple, and we're going to talk Star Wars, Star Trek. We're just going to have fun with the sci-fi stuff. So come on out and have fun and join us where we're just let loose and have fun if I don't have a guest. But if I have a guest, it's going to be somebody big. That's what I do. Go big or go home. Anyway, I do want to reiterate my thanks to all the people that come out and support the show. I know I say this every show. You probably get tired of hearing it, but I do appreciate it. I appreciate the support you give the show, the support you give me, the support you give the creators. I get messages from people that are very kind. And I'm going to be honest, there's times where my tank is empty. My fuel is low, just like everybody else. And someone comes along and says something to me, motivates me, inspires me, and helps fill my tank up again. And today it was Kit and Guy. And I just want to say, and J.M. DeSantis, an excellent writer. He has a lot of books out there. Go check him out. They've been very supportive and very kind. And I'm going to do shout outs to other people as well. And not to be very emotional, but I am a very honest, down-to-earth guy. It means a lot when people appreciate what you do, when they recognize what you do, and that they understand what I'm trying to do. And there's a lot of great people out there that have given me a lost faith I had in people. They have given me faith again. So I want you to all know that you make a difference every day. You know, I may be here interviewing somebody that you admire in the industry and you think I'm making a difference. You're making the difference. Everything you say, everything you do, the way you participate, the way you share my posts, the way you put up with my constant barrage of posts. I know I'm spamming and flooding, trying to get this out there, and you all just support it, and it means a great deal to me. I am very grateful for it, sincerely, and I thank you all. And I've really made some great friends with some people. Mike James, is it Bengston? I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Thank you for that. That is very kind. And I'm serious. When I'm having my down days, I go back and I look at these conversations and it motivates me again. It gets me up and it says, I'm doing it right. I'm doing something. I got to keep going. So what I'm going to tell you is when your tank is getting empty and you need a fuel up, come find me and I'll give you a fuel up. I'll help you, motivate you, and get you going again. We have to build each other up. Life is hard. It keeps getting tougher. And sometimes it feels insurmountable, but that's bullshit. We can overcome. We're strong. We fight. We do what we have to do. Tomorrow is a better day. The sun always shines after a storm. So you did great. My name has been slaughtered, but not by you. Oh, cool. All right. But I'm serious. I know it's been tough. I mean, I live in Suffolk County, so I live in a home, but we don't have a big population here, so I can go out and walk. But I know how it is when you live in a condensed area like Brooklyn or Queens and you're stuck in your apartment, no yard, no balcony. It starts to affect you. People get depressed. People feel hopeless. People feel down. Then they come on Facebook and they start taking that hopelessness and aggression out on others. We have to stop. We have to stop. And guys like you and women like you and everybody, Heather and Steve and Geraldo and Mike and John, all you guys, and Dell, you are the guys, you are the people that are going to keep things in line, keep us working together, and Gallo, and keep us as a unity, as people together. And that is huge. So you're all doing your part. So as much as you say nice things about me, pat yourself on the back because you guys are part of what's right. So I thank you. Having said that, as I always leave you with, be legendary and have fun storming the castle.